we're called to do what we're called to do without being able to see what God is going to do, right? We don't get to see the end from the beginning. God says plant, we say, oh, show me the rain. You don't know if it's going to rain or not. God says plant, you say how deep. You just go plant, right? Look at verse 4 of Ecclesiastes 11. Farmers who wait for perfect weather never plant. If they watch every cloud, they never harvest. Listen, if God tells you to plant, go get planting. And if God tells you to harvest, to prepare for harvest, then get prepared to harvest, no matter what the weather looks like, right? You don't get a guarantee. Life is uncertain, and what God is going to do with your efforts is uncertain, and it doesn't matter. If he's called you to do this, then you do it, and you let him worry about the weather. Does it make sense? You let him worry about what's coming. Look at verses 5 and 6 as he continues that thought. Solomon says, just as you cannot understand the path of the wind or the mystery of a tiny baby growing in its mother's womb, so you cannot understand the activity of God who does all things. So, verse 6 implied, so plant your seed in the morning and keep busy all afternoon, for you don't know if profit, or we could say fruitfulness, if profit will come from one activity or another, or maybe both. Listen, guys, we have got to accept the fact that this life has more uncertainties than we can ever grasp. We can't get a hold of them. We have to trust God with what we can't be certain of. If God tells us to plant, we plant, and we allow God to work it out. If God tells you to do something, you do it because he's God, not because he's guaranteed a certain result. That's why 2 Corinthians 5:7 on the wall says we walk by faith, not by sight. God sets the end. We do what he says, right? This is such a big deal. Solomon says, without being able to understand the path of the wind, without being able to understand the mystery of a baby's life in the mother's womb, without being able to understand the activity of God in your life, what do? You do what God calls you to do, and you let him worry about the end result. I mean, sometimes we just do what we're called to do, and it doesn't make sense. But we let God work it out. We trust him one day at a time. Here's what Solomon is saying. Listen, you do your part, you let God worry about God's part. You don't get to worry about God's part. You only get to worry about your part. You do what he's told you. You let him work out the end results. Our part is to do what God's given us daily with all our effort, with all our heart, trusting God to finish it up. Amen?